The snow fell like judgment. Silas Verner had lived through 36 Montana winters, and he knew the difference between a storm that warned and a storm that killed. This one was the second kind, the kind that buried cattle standing up, the kind that turned men into frozen statues you didn't find until spring thaw. He was a mile from his cabin checking his trapline when he saw the footprints. They were small, unsteady, staggering in a way that told him whoever made them was already dying. Silas looked back toward his cabin, looked forward toward the prints disappearing into the white. His traps could wait. His solitude could wait. Death didn't wait for anyone. He followed the tracks. The wind howled through the pines like something alive and angry. Snow cut across his vision in horizontal sheets. Silas pulled his fur collar higher and pushed forward. The prints were filling fast. Another 10 minutes, and they'd be gone completely. Another 20, and whoever made them would be gone too. He found her half buried in a drift at the base of a rocky outcrop. One small hand stretched above the snow fingers curled like she'd been reaching for something, reaching for help that never came. Silas dropped to his knees and dug. Snow flew behind him in white clouds. His hands, thick with calluses and scars, worked with surprising gentleness. When he pulled her free, she didn't move. Her lips were blue, her skin the color of old paper. Ice crystals clung to her eyelashes and frosted her dark hair. She wore only a thin dress and a threadbare coat that wouldn't keep a dog warm. No gloves, no proper boots. This woman had run into the wilderness with nothing but desperation. Silas pressed 2 fingers to her throat. There, faint as a whisper, a pulse. He didn't hesitate. He gathered her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, just bones and cold flesh and the ghost of a heartbeat. Silas turned and ran toward his cabin. Ran through snow that reached his knees. Ran while the storm screamed around him like all the ghosts he'd ever buried. The cabin appeared through the white like salvation. Silas kicked the door open. Heat from the banked fire rushed out to meet him. He carried the woman inside and laid her on the floor in front of the hearth. Her clothes were frozen to her skin. He had to work fast. He'd done this before, 6 years ago, for Martha. It hadn't worked then. Silas shoved the memory down deep and focused. He stripped away the woman's wet clothes with clinical efficiency. No room for modesty when death was knocking. He saw the scars as he worked, old bruises in various stages of healing, burns that looked like they came from a stove or an iron, the map of someone's cruelty written across her skin. His jaw tightened. He wrapped her in his warmest blanket and pulled her close to the fire, rubbed circulation back into her limbs. Her hands were the worst, fingers white and waxy. Frostbite had already started its work. Silas grabbed the whiskey from his shelf and forced a few drops past her blue lips, liquor to warm from the inside. Then he settled in to wait. Either she'd wake up or she wouldn't. The storm raged outside. The fire crackled. Silas sat against the wall and watched the stranger's chest rise and fall in shallow breaths. Watched and wondered what kind of hell she'd been running from to choose death in the snow instead. An hour passed, then 2. The woman's color slowly returned. Blue lips faded to pale pink. White fingers regained a hint of flesh tone. Her breathing deepened, steadied. Just after sunset, her eyes opened. They were hazel, wide with terror. She saw Silas and tried to scream. No sound came out. Her throat too raw, too cold. Instead, she scrambled backward, dragging the blanket with her, pressing herself against the far wall like a cornered animal. Silas didn't move. He kept his hands visible, kept his voice low and calm, the voice he used with wounded things. "You're safe," he said, "for now." The woman's eyes darted around the cabin, taking in the rifles on the wall, the furs hanging from the rafters, the single room with nowhere to hide. Her gaze settled back on Silas, on his size, his scars, his weathered face that hadn't smiled in 6 years. "Where am I?" Her voice came out as broken glass. "My cabin, Widow's Peak. You were half dead in a snowdrift." She looked at the door, calculating. Silas could see the thought cross her face. How far to town? How fast she could run? "How far to town?" she asked. "In this storm, you'd die in an hour." "Then I'll wait." Silas nodded slowly. He stood, and she flinched. He pretended not to notice, moved to the stove and ladled soup into a wooden bowl, rabbit and wild onion and herbs he'd gathered last fall. He set the bowl on the table, stepped back to give her space. "Eat," he said. "Or don't. Your choice." He turned his back on her, gave her privacy, gave her the illusion of control. He'd learned a long time ago that frightened things needed room to breathe. Behind him, he heard her move, heard the scrape of the bowl, the quiet sounds of someone eating who hadn't eaten in days. Silas stared out the window at the storm and waited. When she finished, her voice came stronger. "Thank you." He turned. She was still wrapped in his blanket, still pressed against the wall, but some of the terror had left her eyes, replaced by exhaustion, by the weight of whatever she'd been running from. "You got a name?" Silas asked. She hesitated, like even her name was something dangerous to give away. "Clara," she finally said. "Clara Wycliffe." Silas filed the name away. Wycliffe, he'd heard it before, somewhere in town, connected to something. He couldn't quite remember. "I'm Silas Verner." Recognition flickered across her face. So she'd heard of him, the hermit on Widow's Peak. The man who buried his family and disappeared into the mountains. The stories they told in town probably made him sound like a monster. Looking at Clara's scars, Silas figured she already knew what real monsters looked like. "Storm won't break for 3 days," he said. "Maybe 4. You'll stay here. There's a room in the back. Door has a bolt. On the inside." He watched her process that. A bolt on the inside. To keep him out, not to keep her in. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Silas looked at her, really looked. At the way she held herself, shoulders hunched, ready for the next blow. At the scars that told a story of years. At the determination in her eyes that brought her this far into the wilderness in winter. "Because someone should have helped you sooner," he said. Then he showed her to the back room and left her alone. That night Silas lay in his loft and listened to the storm, listened to the sound of Clara moving around downstairs, heard the bolt slide home on her door, that small sound of metal on metal that meant she finally felt safe enough to sleep. He stared at the ceiling and tried not to think about how long it had been since another person slept under his roof. Tried not to think about Martha, about Lily. Failed. 3 days before Clara Wycliffe had made a decision. She was going to run or she was going to die. Those were the only options left. It was morning in Silver Pin, Montana, a cold December morning that bit through clothes and found skin. Clara stood in the tiny garden behind her mother's cabin, her hands raw and bleeding from pulling frozen weeds. Her mother wanted the garden cleared. Never mind that nothing would grow until spring. Never mind that it was pointless work. Ida Wycliffe wanted it done, and what Ida wanted Clara did, or else. The back door slammed open. "Clara!" Her mother's voice. Slurred already. It wasn't even noon. Clara stood slowly. Her knees ached from kneeling in frozen dirt. She turned to face the woman who'd given birth to her 21 years ago and spent every day since making her regret being born. Ida Wycliffe stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the dark interior of the cabin. She'd been beautiful once. Clara had seen the old photograph, the young woman with bright eyes and an easy smile standing next to Clara's father on their wedding day. That woman was gone, worn away by whiskey and rage and a grief that had curdled into something poisonous. "I need money," Ida said. "I don't have any." "You worked at Landry's store all week." "He didn't pay me, said it goes toward your debt." Ida's face twisted. She descended the steps unsteady on her feet. Clara didn't move, didn't back away. She'd learned years ago that running only made it worse. "That's your fault?" Ida hissed. "All of it, the debt, the poverty, everything." "Mama, please. Don't call me that." Ida's hand lashed out. The slap caught Clara across the face, sharp and familiar. Clara's head snapped to the side, but she didn't cry out. She'd learned that too. "You're the reason your father's dead," Ida continued, "working himself to death to feed you, to clothe you, and now I'm stuck with his debts and a useless daughter who can't even earn her keep." Clara touched her cheek, felt the heat of the handprint, tasted blood where her teeth had cut her lip. She looked at her mother, really looked, at the yellowed skin, the trembling hands, the eyes that held nothing but bitterness. "I'll find a way to get money," Clara said quietly. "You better. Landry came by yesterday, said if I don't pay him $200 by month's end, he's taking the cabin." $200, an impossible sum. Clara worked 16 hours a day at Landry's general store and saw none of the wages. It all went to debt reduction, a debt that never seemed to shrink, a debt that had started when her father died 7 years ago, or was murdered. Clara had been 14 when it happened, old enough to understand, old enough to see. She'd watched Horace Landry's men near the mine that morning, watched them go in, watched them leave an hour before the collapse that killed her father and 2 other men. She'd told the sheriff. The sheriff had patted her head and told her she was upset, told her accidents happened, told her to run along home. She'd tried to tell again and again. No one listened, no one cared. And eventually, Clara learned that some truths were too dangerous to speak. Now she stood in a frozen garden, blood on her lip, and realized she'd spent 7 years paying for a crime she didn't commit. Enough. "I'll get the money," Clara said. Ida squinted at her, suspicious. "How?" "I have an idea." She didn't. Not yet. But standing there with her cheek burning and her hands bleeding and her mother swaying drunk in the doorway, Clara made her decision. She would run, and if she died running, at least it would be her choice. That afternoon, Clara walked into town. Silverpin wasn't much. 200 souls clustered around a played-out silver mine, hanging on through stubbornness and poverty. Main Street had a saloon, a general store, a church, and a collection of tired buildings that housed tired people. Clara headed for the general store. The bell above the door chimed as she entered. Horace Landry looked up from behind the counter. He was a handsome man, well-dressed, clean-shaven. Everything about him spoke of success and civilization, everything except his eyes. Those were cold and calculating, the eyes of a man who saw everything and everyone as commodities. "Miss Wycliffe," he said pleasantly, "here to work." "Yes, sir." "Good. The stockroom needs organizing. 4 hours should do it. That's 12 cents toward your mother's debt. 12 cents. 4 hours of labor for 12 cents. Clara's father had been an apothecary, had taught her to read and write and calculate. She knew exactly how long it would take to work off $200 at 12 cents per 4-hour shift. It would take years. While she worked, Clara noticed a piece of paper tacked to the wall. An advertisement, handwritten in careful script. Silas Werner, mountain man. Buying furs, herbs, rare plants. Fair prices paid. Inquire at Callaway's General Store. Clara stared at the notice. Herbs, rare plants. Her father had taught her about plants, had given her his journal before he died. A thick leather book filled with sketches and notes about every medicinal herb that grew in Montana. Clara had kept it hidden for 7 years, had memorized every page. She knew plants, she knew their properties, their uses, and she knew that on Widow's Peak a dozen rare species grew that didn't grow anywhere else. A plan formed, desperate and dangerous. But what did she have to lose? That night Clara waited until her mother passed out drunk. Then she gathered her few possessions. Her father's journal, a knife, a threadbare coat, a small pouch of dried herbs she'd been saving. She needed one more thing, a map. At 2 a.m, Clara slipped out of the cabin and walked through empty streets to Ezra Callaway's store. Ezra Callaway had been her father's friend, a kind man, a coward but a kind one. He'd watched Clara's father die and said nothing. Had watched Clara suffer for 7 years and said nothing, but he'd always looked at her with guilty eyes, eyes that said he knew, he remembered. Clara knocked on the back door. Light appeared in an upstairs window. A minute later, Ezra opened the door. He was thin and balding, wearing a nightshirt and holding a lamp. When he saw Clara, his face went white. "Clara, what are you doing here? It's the middle of the night." "I need a map to Widow's Peak." Ezra blinked. "That's 15 miles through wilderness. In winter, you'll die." "I'll die here anyway." Clara met his eyes, slower. Understanding dawned on Ezra's face. He knew about Ida. Everyone in town knew about Ida. They just pretended not to see. "Why Widow's Peak?" he asked. "Why Werner? He's the only person in 50 miles who doesn't owe Landry anything." Ezra flinched at that, because it was true. Everyone in Silverpin was connected to Landry, through debt or employment or fear. Everyone except the hermit on the mountain. "Werner doesn't like visitors," Ezra said. "He might turn you away." "Then I'll die in the snow." Clara's voice didn't waver. "At least it'll be my choice." Ezra stared at her, this girl he'd watched grow up, this daughter of his dead friend. He could say no, could close the door, could choose safety. Instead, he stepped aside. "Come in." Clara followed him into the store. Ezra lit more lamps, pulled out paper and a pencil. His hands shook as he drew. "The trail starts behind the old church," he said. "Follow the creek north for 3 miles. Then you'll see a lightning-struck pine. That's where you turn east." He continued drawing. Clara memorized every line, every landmark. "It's rough country," Ezra warned. "Wild. Even in good weather, it's dangerous." "I know." "Werner lives alone for a reason. There are stories." Clara had heard the stories. About the mountain man who buried his wife and child, who disappeared into the wilderness 6 years ago, who spoke to no one and wanted nothing to do with the world below. "I don't care about stories," she said. "I care about survival." Ezra finished the map, pushed it across the counter. Then he reached under the register and pulled out a small bundle. Dried meat, hard bread, a tin of matches. "Take these," he said. "I can't pay you." "I don't want payment." Ezra's voice cracked. "Your father was my friend. I should have helped you sooner. I should have been brave." Clara took the bundle, looked at this man who'd lived with guilt for 7 years. "It's not too late," she said. Ezra shook his head sadly. "For some of us it is." Clara left through the back door, walked home through empty streets, hid the map and supplies under her thin mattress. When morning came, she'd wait for her mother to pass out. Then she'd run. By sunrise, Ida was already drinking. By noon, she was unconscious in her chair. Clara didn't say goodbye, didn't leave a note. She simply walked out the door and didn't look back. The journey to Widow's Peak took 2 days. The first day wasn't so bad. Clara followed the creek north, found the lightning-struck pine, turned east. The weather held. Cold, but clear. She walked until her feet went numb, made camp in a cave, ate dried meat and tried not to think about how far she still had to go. The second day the storm hit. It came from nowhere. One moment clear sky, the next white wall, snow so thick Clara couldn't see her own hands, wind that screamed through the trees and cut through her thin coat like she was wearing nothing. Clara kept walking. What else could she do? Stop and freeze. She followed what she thought was the trail, stumbled over roots she couldn't see, fell twice, 3 times, lost count. Her hands stopped hurting. That was bad. She knew that was bad. Frostbite was setting in, her feet too, numb and clumsy. She couldn't feel the ground anymore. Clara thought about her father, about the way he used to call her his little wildflower, said she could grow anywhere, said she was stronger than she knew. "I'm trying, Papa," she whispered to the storm. "I'm trying." But trying wasn't enough. Clara's legs gave out. She fell into snow that felt soft as a bed, comfortable, inviting. She was so tired, so cold. Maybe she could just rest, just for a minute. The snow covered her like a blanket. Clara's last thought before darkness took her was simple. At least I chose this. When she woke in Silas Werner's cabin, warm and alive and wrapped in his blanket, Clara didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So she did neither. She just sat silent and watched this huge, scarred mountain man who'd pulled her from death without asking for anything in return. The storm raged for 3 days. Clara spent them learning the rhythms of Silas Werner's life. He woke before dawn, built up the fire, made coffee so strong it could strip paint. He'd leave for hours to check his trap lines, return with rabbits or sometimes a deer, process the meat with efficient, practiced movements. He didn't talk much, didn't ask questions, gave Clara space. The back room became her sanctuary, small but clean. A narrow bed, a washstand, a window that looked out at endless white, and the bolt on the door that Silas had mentioned. On the inside, Clara slid it home every night and felt something in her chest loosen. Safety. The word felt foreign. On the second day, Clara ventured out of her room while Silas was checking traps. She explored the cabin with quiet steps. One room, sparse, functional. But she noticed things. Books on a shelf, Shakespeare, Thoreau, a Bible with worn pages, a harmonica on the table, furs everywhere, not just beaver and rabbit, fox, wolf, even a bear pelt that must have come from something massive, and photographs, 3 of them, face down on the mantel above the fireplace. Clara knew she shouldn't, knew it was private, but her hand moved before her mind could stop it. She turned over the first photograph. A woman, beautiful, dark hair and kind eyes, and a smile that looked like sunlight. She held a small child, maybe 3 years old. The child had her mother's smile. Behind them stood Silas, younger, clean-shaven, smiling in a way that transformed his entire face, the happy family that used to be. Clara carefully set the photograph face down again, exactly as she'd found it. Some wounds were too deep to look at straight on. That evening, Silas returned with 2 rabbits and a collection of plants. He laid them on the table and began cleaning the rabbits. Clara watched from across the room. "The plants," she said. "May I see them?" Silas glanced at her, nodded. Clara approached the table, examined the plants he'd gathered. Yarrow, nettle, wild onion. Basic stuff, good for soup. "You know plants?" Silas asked. "My father was an apothecary. Was dead 7 years. Silas nodded, didn't press, didn't offer hollow sympathy, just went back to cleaning rabbits. Clara appreciated that more than he could know. "These are good," she said, touching the yarrow. "But there's better growing on the south slope. Comfrey root, good for wounds. And if you know where to look, you can find ghost pipe. Rare, valuable." Silas's hands stilled. He looked at her with new interest. "You can identify rare plants." "Yes. In winter, if I have my father's journal, I brought it with me." Something shifted in Silas's expression. Calculation, not cruel, just practical, like he was solving a problem. "Storm's breaking tomorrow," he said. "You'll want to head back to town." Clara's stomach dropped. Back to town. Back to Ida. Back to Landry. Back to everything she'd run from. "I can't go back," she said quietly. "Why not?" Clara looked at her hands, at the scars on her wrists, at the calluses from 7 years of unpaid labor, because going back means dying, just slower. Silas studied her, those gray eyes that missed nothing, saw too much. "Who did that to your face?" he asked. Clara's hand went to her cheek, the bruise from her mother's slap, faded now but still visible. "My mother. And the scars on your arms, her too, and the stove, and whatever else was in reach when she was angry." Silas's jaw tightened. He went back to cleaning rabbits, worked in silence for a long minute. "You got anywhere else to go?" he asked. "No." "Anyone looking for you?" Clara thought about Landry, about the debt, about Ezra, who knew where she'd gone. "Probably." "Probably isn't no. A man named Horace Landry. My mother owes him money. A lot of money. I was working it off." "Working how?" "His store. 16 hours a day, no wages. Everything went to debt. Silas set down his knife, looked at her dead on. That's not work, that's slavery. Clara had never thought of it that way, but hearing it said out loud, hearing the word, something in her recognized the truth of it. Yes, she whispered, I suppose it was. On the third day, someone knocked on the cabin door. Clara froze. Silas was outside, splitting wood. She heard the axe stop mid-swing, heard his heavy footsteps on the porch, heard the door open. Thomas! Silas's voice, relieved. Silas! Wasn't sure I'd make it through that storm. An older voice, rough with age, but steady. Clara stayed in her room, but listened. You shouldn't have tried, Silas said. Could have waited until spring. Brought you supplies. And news from town. Don't need news. You'll want to hear this. Footsteps. The sounds of someone settling in. Clara cracked her door, peeked out. An old man sat at Silas's table, thin, gray-bearded, kind eyes that had seen hard years. He was unpacking a saddlebag, coffee, tobacco, salt. Then he looked up and saw Clara. Well now, Thomas said. You got a woman here. Found her in the snow 3 days ago. Thomas's eyes went from Silas to Clara and back, reading the situation, coming to conclusions. She got a name, Clara Wycliffe. Thomas went still. His weathered face paled. Wycliffe, Henry Wycliffe's daughter. You knew my father. Clara stepped fully into the room. Knew him. Yes, good man. Sorry about what happened. What did happen? Clara asked. Everyone says accident, but it wasn't, was it? Thomas looked at Silas. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. Finally, Thomas sighed. Your father discovered something about Landry, about the medicines he was selling. Found out Landry was diluting them, cutting them with water, selling them full price. People were dying because treatments didn't work. Clara's breath caught. She'd known her father had confronted Landry, hadn't known why. Henry threatened to go to the territorial authorities, Thomas continued. 3 days later, the mine collapsed. Your father was inside. You think Landry killed him? I know he did. I saw Landry's men near the mine that morning, heard them talking. They set charges, made it look like an accident. Why didn't you say anything? Clara's voice shook, not with fear, with rage. Thomas looked down at his hands, old, scarred, trembling slightly. Because I'm a coward, he said simply. I've been a coward for 20 years, ever since my wife died, ever since I decided it was easier to be alone than to care. Silence filled the cabin, heavy, painful. That's why you're here now, Silas said, and to tell her. Partly. Thomas reached into his coat, pulled out a newspaper. This, too, from Silverpin, 2 days old. He unfolded it, pointed to a notice. Missing Clara Wycliffe, age 21. Last seen December 18th. Reward for information, $200. Contact Horace Landry. Clara stared at the words. $200, the exact amount of her mother's debt. He's not looking for you out of concern, Thomas said. He's looking to make an example. Can't have people thinking they can just walk away from debts. I didn't walk away, Clara said. I ran. There's a difference. Silas took the newspaper. Read it. His expression didn't change, but Clara saw his hands tighten on the paper. How long before he finds her here? Silas asked. Not long. Ezra Calloway drew her a map. Landry's been asking questions. Ezra's not good under pressure. Ezra helped me, Clara said. He gave me supplies, told me how to get here. Ezra's a good man, Thomas agreed, but he's scared, and scared men talk. Silas looked at Clara, then at Thomas, making some kind of decision. Clara, he said, can I talk to you outside? They stepped onto the porch. Snow had stopped falling. The world was white and silent and endless. Silas stood with his arms crossed, looking out at the mountains. You've got choices, he said. I can take you back to town right now. You face Landry, face whatever he wants, or you stay here. Work for me. Winter's long. I get sick sometimes. Infections, fevers. I need someone who knows herbs, knows medicine. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you time. Time to figure out what comes next. Come spring, I'll take you anywhere you want to go." Clara looked at him, this huge, scarred man who'd pulled her from death, who'd given her warmth and food and safety without asking anything in return, who was now offering her something no one had offered in 7 years, a choice. "What do you get out of this?" she asked. Silas turned to face her. His gray eyes were steady, honest. "Someone who can keep me alive when I'm too stubborn to do it myself," he said, "and maybe someone to talk to. Gets quiet up here." "You don't talk much." "Maybe I'm tired of being quiet." Clara looked back at the cabin, at Thomas visible through the window, at this small warm place in the middle of endless cold. She thought about Silverpin, about Ida, about Landry's reward notice. She thought about her father's voice, calling her his wildflower. Wildflowers grew where they chose, not where they were planted. "I'll stay," Clara said, "until spring." Silas nodded. Something that might have been relief crossed his face, might have been something else. "Then we have a deal." They shook hands. His hand was huge and rough and warm. Clara's was small and scarred and steady, the handshake of two people choosing each other, not because they had to, but because they could. Inside, Thomas watched them through the window. His weathered face showed relief, and something else, something like fear, because Thomas knew what happened when Silas Werner cared about someone. They died. That night, after Thomas had left and the cabin was quiet, Clara sat in her room and opened her father's journal, ran her fingers over his handwriting, over the sketches of plants he'd drawn with such care. There was a knock on her door. "Clara?" Silas's voice. "You still awake?" "Yes." "I'm leaving early tomorrow. Check the north trap line. I'll be gone most of the day. There's food in the larder. Help yourself." "All right." A pause. "Clara?" "Yes." "Lock your door tonight. Not because of me, just because you can." Clara heard his footsteps retreat, heard him climb the ladder to the loft, heard the creak of floorboards as he settled in. She stood, crossed to the door, and for the first time in her life, Clara Wycliffe locked a door to keep the world out instead of being locked in. The sound of the bolt sliding home echoed in the quiet, small, metallic, final. The sound of choosing safety over survival, the sound of beginning again. 50 miles away in Silverpin, Ezra Calloway locked up his store for the night. His hands shook as he turned the key. He'd been shaking for 3 days, ever since Horace Landry had walked in and started asking questions. Ezra had denied everything, hadn't seen Clara, didn't know where she'd gone, had no idea about any map. Landry had smiled, that cold, knowing smile. "Of course not, Ezra, of course not." Now Ezra walked home through empty streets and felt eyes watching from every shadow, felt guilt sitting heavy in his chest like a stone. He reached his small house behind the store, climbed the steps, reached for the doorknob. It turned before he could touch it. The door opened. Horace Landry stood in Ezra's parlor, comfortable, like he owned the place. Maybe he did. Landry owned most of Silverpin. "Evening, Ezra," Landry said pleasantly. "We need to talk." Ezra's mouth went dry. "About what? About Clara Wycliffe? About a map? About Widow's Peak?" Landry pulled out a chair, gestured for Ezra to sit. "Tell me everything," Landry said, "and maybe we can both avoid unpleasantness." Ezra looked at this man who'd killed his friend, who'd terrorized a young woman into slavery, who controlled everything in this town through debt and fear. He thought about Henry Wycliffe, about promises he'd never kept, about bravery that came 20 years too late. He sat down, and in a voice that shook but didn't break, Ezra Calloway began to talk. The first week passed in careful silence. Clara woke each morning to the sound of Silas building up the fire. She'd lie in her narrow bed and listen to his movements, precise, economical, the scrape of wood on metal, the whisper of kindling catching flame, the quiet rhythm of a man who'd lived alone so long he'd learned to make silence comfortable. She'd dress in the spare clothes he'd given her, Men's clothes, too large but warm. Roll up the sleeves, cinch the belt tight. By the time she emerged from her room, Silas would be gone. Out checking his trap lines, gone for hours. Clara used the time to make herself useful. She couldn't repay him with money, didn't have any. But she could repay him with work, with value, with proof that keeping her here wasn't charity. She cleaned the cabin, not that it needed much. Silas kept things tidy in a Spartan way. But Clara scrubbed floors, organized shelves, mended tears in his spare shirts with thread she found in a tin box. Small things, quiet things, things that said, "I'm not a burden." On the third day she found the hidden garden. Behind the cabin, sheltered from wind by a stand of pines, a small plot of land lay buried under snow. Clara could see the remnants of a fence, the ghost of careful rows. Someone had tended this ground once, had planted things here, had cared. Clara cleared the snow with a shovel she found in the shed, underneath frozen soil, and beneath that, if she dug carefully, root vegetables that had overwintered, potatoes, turnips, carrots gone woody but still edible. She harvested what she could, brought them inside, made soup. When Silas returned that evening, he stopped in the doorway, stared at the pot bubbling on the stove, at Clara stirring it with a wooden spoon. "You found the garden," he said. "I hope that's all right." "It's fine." He paused. "I forgot it was there." He didn't say who'd planted it. Didn't need to. Clara had seen the photograph, the woman with kind eyes who'd probably spent summer mornings there, planting, weeding, growing things. They ate in silence, but it was a different kind of silence, less careful, less guarded, the silence of two people learning to share space without fear. After dinner, Clara cleared the bowls. Silas didn't stop her this time, just watched her move around his kitchen like she belonged there. "You're good with plants," he said. "My father taught me." Thomas said he was an apothecary. He was, best in the territory. Clara's voice softened. People came from 50 miles around for his remedies. He could cure anything, fevers, infections, even helped women through difficult births. What happened to him? Clara set down the bowl she was washing, stared out the window at darkness. "The mine happened. Or that's what they said. Cave in. 3 men died. My father was one of them." "You don't believe it was an accident?" It wasn't a question. Silas had a way of hearing what she didn't say. "I know it wasn't," Clara said. "I saw Horace Landry's men near the mine that morning, saw them go in, saw them come out an hour before the collapse." "You told someone?" "I told the sheriff. Told him 3 times. He said I was mistaken, said I was upset, said little girls shouldn't make accusations they couldn't prove." Silas's hands tightened on his coffee cup. "How old were you?" 14. He nodded slowly, like that explained something, like that made her scars make sense. "Your mother," he said. "She know what you saw." Clara laughed, bitter, empty. "My mother was already halfway to the bottom of a bottle by then. She didn't care what I saw, didn't care about anything except where the next drink was coming from." "That when she started hitting you?" "No, that came later. After the money ran out. After Landry came collecting on my father's debts. Debts I'm pretty sure Landry invented. But again, no proof. Just a girl's word against a respected businessman." Silas stood, walked to the window, stood there looking out at nothing. "Your father," he said quietly. "What did he tell you before he died?" Clara closed her eyes, remembered. "He told me I was his wildflower, that I could grow anywhere, that I was stronger than I knew." She opened her eyes. "I don't feel very strong. You walked 15 miles through winter wilderness, half froze to death, and you're still standing." Silas turned to look at her. "That's not weak." Something in Clara's chest loosened, some knot she'd been carrying for 7 years. "Thank you," she whispered. Silas just nodded, went back to staring out the window. That night, for the first time since she'd arrived, Clara heard music. She was in her room reading her father's journal by candlelight when the sound drifted through the door. Harmonica. Simple melody, sad and sweet and haunting. Red River Valley. Clara set down the journal, listened. The music wrapped around her like warm hands, like comfort, like the memory of safety she'd almost forgotten existed. She didn't go out, didn't interrupt, just sat on her bed and listened while Silas played songs for ghosts in the room above. And for the first time in 7 years, Clara cried. Not from pain, not from fear, but from something softer, something that felt almost like hope. On the 5th day, Silas came back from his trap lines with blood soaking through his left hand. Clara saw it the moment he walked through the door, the way he held his arm, the pale cast to his face, the way he moved too carefully. What happened? She was on her feet immediately. Beaver trap. Said it wrong. Snapped shut on my hand. Let me see. It's fine. It's not fine. You're bleeding through your glove. Let me see. Silas hesitated, then slowly pulled off his glove. The cut was deep, ran across the back of his hand from thumb to pinky. Blood welled up fast. And around the edges, Clara could already see the angry red of infection starting. Sit, she ordered. To her surprise, Silas obeyed. Clara brought water, clean cloth, her father's journal. She paged through it quickly, found what she needed: yarrow for bleeding, comfrey root for wounds, golden seal for infection. You have these, she asked. Dried, in the tin by the stove. Clara found the tin, mixed a poultice with practiced hands, hands that remembered her father's teachings, hands that had done this 100 times under his patient guidance. She cleaned Silas's wound, watched him grit his teeth but make no sound, applied the poultice, wrapped it tight. You need to keep this clean, she said. Change the dressing twice a day. If the redness spreads, we'll need stronger measures. You've done this before. My father taught me. Said plants were smarter than doctors. Said God put the cure right next to the poison. You just had to know where to look. Silas studied his bandaged hand, then looked at Clara with something new in his eyes. Respect, maybe, recognition. Your father was a wise man, he said. He was. I'm sorry he's gone. Clara nodded, couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. That evening, Silas played harmonica again, but this time Clara came out of her room, sat in the chair across from him, watched his fingers move over the instrument, clumsy because of the bandage, but determined. When he finished the song, he lowered the harmonica. My wife used to sing this, he said. It was the first time he'd mentioned her directly. What was her name? Clara asked carefully. Martha. Tell me about her. Silas was quiet for so long, Clara thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, slow, halting, like the words cost him. She was kind, too kind for this world. Used to rescue wounded animals, birds with broken wings, rabbits caught in traps. She'd nurse them back, set them free. He turned the harmonica over in his good hand. She tried to rescue me, too. From what? Myself. Clara waited. Silas set down the harmonica. I wasn't always a mountain man, he said. Used to live in town, had a job, a house, a family. Then Martha got sick, after Lily was born. She didn't get better, got quieter, sadder, stopped singing. I didn't understand. Thought she just needed time. His voice went rough. I went hunting, 3 weeks, 50 miles north. Thought the space would be good. Thought when I came back she'd be better. Clara's heart clenched. She knew how this story ended. When I got back, Thomas was waiting. He'd already buried them. Said Martha went first, Lily a week later, too young to survive without her mother. I'm sorry, Clara whispered. Don't be. Silas stood, walked to the window. It was my fault. I left them. I should have stayed, should have seen, should have done something. You couldn't have known. I should have known. I was her husband. I should have seen she was drowning. Clara stood too, crossed the room, stood beside him, at the window. My father used to say, we can't change the past, she said quietly. We can only choose what we do with the time we have left. Silas looked down at her, really looked, and Clara saw it. The same guilt she carried, the same weight, the same question that haunted both of them. "Could I have saved them, your father?" Silas said. "You think you could have saved him? I know I couldn't. I was 14. But I still feel like I should have tried harder, should have made someone listen." "That's the thing about guilt," Silas said. "Doesn't matter what's logical, just matters what we feel." They stood together in the lamplight, two broken people holding the weight of their dead. "I found something," Clara said. "When I was cleaning. I wasn't snooping, I promise. But there was a box, under the floorboard in my room. It was already open." Silas went very still. "What did you find?" "Letters, a photograph, a child's dress." Clara paused. "And a note in your wife's handwriting." She saw Silas's jaw clench, saw the pain flash across his face. "You read it," he said. "Yes, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "What did it say?" Clara remembered the words. They were burned into her memory. "It said it wasn't your fault, that the darkness was always in her, that she couldn't fight it anymore. She asked you to forgive her." Silas closed his eyes. His voice came out barely above a whisper. "She hung herself. In the barn, while Lily was sleeping. Thomas found her the next morning. Clara's hand found his, held tight. 'The note,' she said, 'she was telling you the truth. It wasn't your fault. She was sick. Sick in a way you couldn't see, couldn't fix, no matter how much you loved her.' I should have been there. Maybe. But being there wouldn't have changed what was inside her. You can't love someone out of that kind of darkness. You can only stand beside them while they fight it, and sometimes they lose." Silas opened his eyes, looked at their joined hands. He didn't pull away. "How'd you get so wise?" he asked. 7 years of surviving taught me. Pain teaches, if you let it." They stood like that, hands clasped, both looking out at the dark mountain, both carrying their dead. But somehow the weight felt lighter, shared. "Thank you," Silas said, "for telling me, for not pretending you didn't see." "I understand secrets," Clara said. "I understand why we keep them, but I also understand that sometimes saying them out loud makes them smaller." Silas squeezed her hand once, then let go. But something had changed. Some wall had cracked. On the 8th day, Thomas Voss returned. He came through the door like a storm wind, face pale, breathing hard, snow covering his coat and hat. "Silas," he gasped, "we have a problem." Silas was on his feet instantly. "What happened?" "Landry's men. They went to Ezra's store, roughed him up. He talked." Clara's stomach dropped. "Talked about what?" she asked. Thomas looked at her, pity in his old eyes. "About you, about the map, about Widow's Peak." "How bad?" Silas asked. "Bad. Landry knows she's here. He's talking to the territorial marshal, filing a complaint." "What kind of complaint?" Thomas pulled a folded paper from his coat, handed it to Silas. Clara read over his shoulder. It was a formal legal document, signed by Horace Landry, witnessed by Sheriff Owen Brennan. It claimed that Silas Werner had kidnapped Clara Wycliffe, taken her by force against her will, held her captive on Widow's Peak. "That's a lie," Clara said. "I came here on my own. I chose to stay." "Doesn't matter," Thomas said. "Landry's got the sheriff in his pocket, got half the town too. Your word against his. And he's a respected businessman. You're just a girl running from debt." "What about Ezra?" Silas asked. "Will he testify?" Thomas's face went dark. "Ezra's in bad shape. They broke his arm, cracked a few ribs. He'll live. But he's not talking anymore. Too scared." Clara felt rage building in her chest. Hot, fierce. For years she'd swallowed her anger, buried it deep. But now it rose like fire. "This is my fault," she said. "I brought this to your door." "No!" Silas's voice was firm. "Landry brought this. You just ran from it." "The marshal's coming," Thomas continued. 2 weeks, maybe 3, depends on the snow. But he's coming. And when he gets here, Silas, they'll arrest you. Kidnapping's a hanging offense." Silence filled the cabin, heavy as stones. "Then I'll leave," Clara said. "I'll go back, face Landry, tell the truth." He'll bury you in debt, Thomas said. Work you to death. Then that's my choice. Like hell it is. Silas's voice cut sharp. Clara turned to him, saw fury in his eyes, but not at her, at the situation, at the injustice, at men like Landry who used law as a weapon. I won't let you hang for helping me, she said, and I won't let you go back to slavery. Then what do we do? Thomas spoke up. There's another option, a legal one. Both Silas and Clara looked at him. I have proof, Thomas said, about your father's death, about Landry's involvement. Clara's breath caught. What kind of proof? I was there, at the mine. That morning, I saw Landry's men, heard them talking about setting charges, about making it look like an accident. You were there, Clara's voice shook. You knew, all this time you knew. Thomas met her gaze, didn't flinch from the accusation. Yes, I knew, and I said nothing, because I'm a coward, because I was afraid of what Landry would do. My father died because you said nothing. I know. I spent 7 years in hell because you said nothing. I know, Thomas's voice broke. I've lived with that guilt every day, every single day, watching you grow up, watching your mother destroy you, knowing I could have stopped it, should have stopped it. Tears ran down his weathered face. I can't change the past, Clara. God knows I wish I could. But maybe I can help fix the future if I testify. If I tell the marshal what I saw, Landry will be arrested. His hold on the town will break. You'll be free. Clara stared at this old man, this coward who'd let her father die, who'd watched her suffer, who was now offering redemption too late. Why now? She asked. Why not 7 years ago? Because 7 years ago I was still choosing safety over honor. Thomas wiped his face. But I'm 62 years old. I've lived alone for 20 years. And I'm tired. Tired of being afraid. Tired of watching good people suffer while I hide. He looked at Silas. You're my only friend. The only person who's mattered to me in 2 decades. If they take you, if they hang you, I'll be alone again, and this time I won't survive it. Understanding passed between the two men, some bond Clara didn't fully grasp. But she saw it, the friendship, the history, the mutual isolation they'd shared. If you testify against Landry, Silas said slowly, he'll come for you. I know, he'll kill you, probably. Thomas smiled sadly, but maybe that's what I deserve. Maybe it's time I was brave, just once. Clara looked between them, saw what they were planning, saw the danger. No, she said, I won't let you die for me. Either of you. It's not about you, Thomas said gently. It's about me, about finally doing the right thing. The right thing will get you killed. The wrong thing has been killing me for 20 years. Thomas stood. At least this way I die for something that matters. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to refuse, but she saw the determination in his eyes. The need. This old man had spent 2 decades running from his conscience. Now he was running toward it, even if it meant running toward his death. That night they made a plan. Thomas would ride to the territorial marshal's office in Helena. 2 days' journey. He'd file a formal statement about Henry Wycliffe's murder, about Landry's involvement, about the years of corruption. The marshal would have to investigate, would have to come to Silverpin. And when he did, Thomas would testify, in public, where Landry couldn't silence him quietly. It was dangerous. It was desperate. It was all they had. I leave at dawn, Thomas said. Take my horse, Silas offered. Faster than yours. I'll take supplies, food, ammunition. They discussed logistics like soldiers planning a battle. Clara listened and felt helpless. These men were risking everything. For her, for justice, for a dead man's honor. Finally, Thomas left, rode back to his cabin to prepare. Silas and Clara were alone again. The cabin felt smaller somehow, more intimate. Clara stood by the fire. Silas at the window, both aware of time running out. If this goes wrong, Clara said quietly, it won't. But if it does, Silas turned to face her, crossed the room, stopped close enough that Clara had to tilt her head to meet his eyes. "If it goes wrong," he said, "I want you to run. Take my horse, ride north, don't stop until you reach the Canadian border." "I'm not running any more." "Clara, I'm not." Her voice was steady. "I've spent my whole life running. From my mother, from Landry, from pain. I'm done. This isn't bravery, it's suicide. Maybe, or maybe it's finally choosing to fight." Silas studied her face, saw the determination there, the steel she'd been hiding under years of fear. "You've changed," he said, "since you got here. So have you." "How?" Clara reached up, touched his bearded cheek, felt him go very still. "You're not hiding anymore," she said. "You're here, present, alive. Because of you. Because you chose to be." They stood like that, her hand on his face, his eyes locked on hers, the air between them charged with something neither could name. Silas's hand came up, covered hers, his palm rough and warm and steady. "When Martha died," he said softly, "I thought I'd never feel anything again. Thought I'd live on this mountain until I froze to death, or a bear got me, didn't care which. What changed? You stumbled into my life, half frozen, bleeding, angry, and you made me remember what it feels like to hope." Clara's breath caught. "Silas!" "I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I know I'm 20 years older than you. I know I'm broken. I know I've got nothing to offer but a cabin and some furs and a mountain that tries to kill you half the year." "Stop," Clara whispered. "I just wanted you to know, if this all goes to hell tomorrow, I wanted you to know that these past weeks, they've meant something. You've meant something." Clara's eyes burned with tears. "You mean something too," she said. "You're the first person in 7 years who's treated me like I matter, like I'm more than just a burden or a debt or a mistake. You're not any of those things. I know that now because you showed me." Silas's thumb traced across her knuckles. Gentle, reverent. "If we survive this," he said, "if we make it through, would you stay? Not because you have to, not because you owe me, but because you want to." Clara's heart hammered. This man was offering her something she'd never had. Not rescue, not charity, but partnership, choice, a future built on want instead of need. "Yes," she whispered, "I'd stay." Silas closed his eyes, like her words were painful, like they hurt in the best way. Then he leaned down and pressed his forehead to hers. They stood like that for a long moment, breathing together, not kissing, not speaking, just existing in the same space, choosing each other in the quiet. Finally, Silas pulled back. "You should sleep," he said. "Tomorrow's going to be hard." Clara nodded, started toward her room, stopped at the door. "Silas?" "Yeah, I'm glad I found you. Even if it all ends tomorrow, I'm glad." She saw his throat work, saw him swallow hard. "Me too," he said. Clara went to her room, locked the bolt, not from fear, but from habit. She sat on her bed and touched her lips, imagined what it would have felt like if he'd kissed her, if she'd been brave enough to close that final distance. Maybe tomorrow, if they survived. If Thomas made it to Helena, if the marshal believed him, if Landry didn't kill them all first. So many ifs. Clara lay down and tried to sleep, failed. Her mind raced with everything that could go wrong, everything she stood to lose. She'd come to this mountain expecting to die, had been ready for it, had chosen freezing in the snow over one more day of her mother's fists. But now she wanted to live, wanted it fiercely, wanted mornings by the fire and evenings with harmonica music and quiet conversations with a man who saw her as whole instead of broken. She wanted a future, and that wanting made everything more dangerous. At dawn, Thomas returned. Clara woke to voices outside. She dressed quickly, went out to find Thomas and Silas loading supplies onto Silas's horse. Thomas looked older in the morning light, tired, but determined. "Ready?" Silas asked. "As I'll ever be." Thomas mounted up, looked down at them both. 2 weeks, he said. "I'll send word when the marshal's coming." "Be careful," Silas said. "Always am." Thomas smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He looked at Clara. Your father would be proud of you, girl. You know that—" Clara's throat tightened. "Thank you." Thomas nodded, turned his horse, started down the trail. They watched him go. Watched until he disappeared into the trees. Watched until even the sound of hoofbeats faded. Then silence. Silas and Clara stood side by side in the snow, both knowing that everything now depended on an old man's courage, on a marshal they'd never met, on justice that might not exist. "How long do we wait?" Clara asked. 2 weeks, like he said. And if he doesn't come back," Silas's jaw tightened, "then we have a different problem." They went inside. The cabin felt emptier somehow, like Thomas had taken hope with him. Clara made breakfast. Silas cleaned his rifles. They moved around each other in careful silence, both thinking, both afraid. The day passed slow as honey. By evening the snow started again, thick, heavy, the kind that buried trails and made travel impossible. Silas stood at the window, watching it fall. "He'll make it," Clara said, more to herself than to him. "He's tough, survived worse." But there was doubt in Silas's voice, fear. That night neither of them could sleep. Clara heard Silas moving around upstairs, pacing. She got up, climbed the ladder to the loft for the first time. He turned when she appeared, surprise on his face. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "No, no." They sat together on his narrow bed, close but not touching, looking out the small window at snow falling eternal. "Tell me about Lily," Clara said. Silas was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. She had Martha's eyes, blue as summer sky, and she laughed at everything, even when nothing was funny. Used to play hide and seek. She was terrible at it. Always giggled when I got close. His voice went soft. "She called me Papa Bear because I was big and grumbly and she thought it was hilarious." Clara smiled. Imagine this huge scarred man playing with a tiny girl. "She sounds perfect." She was. For 3 years she was perfect. "I'm sorry you lost her. I'm sorry I couldn't save her." Clara took his hand, held tight. "Some people can't be saved," she said. "Not because they're not worth it, but because the world's too cruel, and all we can do is love them while we have them, and remember them when they're gone." Silas looked at their joined hands. "Is that what you do with your father?" "Every day. I remember him. I use what he taught me. I try to be the person he believed I could be." "Your wildflower." "Yes." Silas lifted her hand, pressed it to his chest, over his heart. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For reminding me that living isn't betraying the dead." They sat like that until dawn, not sleeping, not speaking, just being together in the dark. And when morning came, they were still holding hands. 7 days passed. No word from Thomas. The snow kept falling. Silas's trap lines filled, and he didn't check them, couldn't leave Clara alone, not with Landry knowing where she was. They settled into a tense routine, waiting, watching, listening for hoofbeats that didn't come. On the 8th day they heard horses, multiple horses. Silas grabbed his rifle, moved to the window. Clara stood frozen. "How many?" she whispered. "Can't tell. 2, maybe 3. "Is it Thomas?" "Don't know." The horses got closer. Silas moved to the door. Clara picked up the spare rifle. Her hand shook, but she held it steady. A voice called out, "Silas Verner! This is Sheriff Owen Brennan. We need to talk." Clara and Silas exchanged glances. "You know him?" Clara asked. "Met him once, years ago. He's Landry's man." "What do we do?" Silas's jaw set hard. He opened the door, rifle ready. Outside stood 3 men on horses. Sheriff Owen Brennan in the center, stocky, graying mustache, tired eyes. He held up his hands, empty. "Not here for trouble, Verner," Owen said. "Then why are you here?" Owen's eyes shifted to Clara, standing behind Silas. "Need to talk to the girl, Miss Wycliffe." "About what?" Owen dismounted slowly, hands still visible. The 2 men with him stayed mounted, watching, waiting. "About Thomas Voss," Owen said. Clara's stomach dropped. "What about him?" Silas asked. Owen's face was grim. He dismounted slowly, reached into his saddlebag, pulled out something wrapped in oilcloth. "He's dead," Owen said quietly. The words hit like a physical blow. Clara felt her knees buckle. Silas caught her, held her up. "How?" Silas's voice was deadly quiet. "Found him on the road to Helena, 2 days out from town, shot twice. Once in the back, once in the head." Owen's voice cracked. Made to look like robbery. But his saddlebags were still there, money still in his pocket, nothing taken. "Landry," Clara whispered. Owen didn't deny it, just looked at her with those tired eyes. "I can't prove it, miss. But between you and me, yeah. Probably Landry. Thomas was the only witness to Henry Wycliffe's murder. Only man alive who could testify against him." Silas's arms tightened around Clara. She felt him shaking, not with fear, with rage, with grief. "When?" Silas asked. 3 days ago. Found him yesterday morning. He'd been lying there all night. Animals had already—" Owen stopped, cleared his throat. "I brought him back, buried him proper, next to his wife. Thought you'd want to know that." Silas closed his eyes. His jaw clenched so hard Clara heard his teeth grind. "He was my friend," Silas said, voice barely above a whisper. "My only friend." "I know. He talked about you sometimes. Said you were the only man he could trust, the only one who understood." Owen unwrapped the oilcloth package. Inside was a thick leather pouch and a sealed letter. "Found these in his boot," Owen said. "Hidden. The letter's addressed to you. The pouch." He opened it. Papers spilled out. Testimony. Everything Thomas witnessed. Names, dates, details about Henry Wycliffe's murder, about Landry's corruption, all of it. Silas took the letter with shaking hands, broke the seal, read. Clara read over his shoulder. Thomas's handwriting. Shaky but clear. "Silas, if you're reading this, I didn't make it, but I tried. I wrote everything down, every detail about Henry Wycliffe's murder, about Landry's corruption, about the medicines he diluted, about the people who died because of his greed. It's all here. Take it to the marshal. Make them listen. Don't let me die for nothing. Tell Clara I'm sorry. Sorry I was a coward for 20 years. Sorry I let her father die. Sorry I didn't protect her when I could have. But I'm not sorry I finally chose to be brave, even if it killed me. At least I died for something that mattered. Your friend, Thomas Voss." Silas's hands trembled. The letter crumpled in his grip. He turned away, walked to the edge of the porch, stood there with his back to them all. Clara saw his shoulders shake, heard the sound he tried to swallow, the sound of a man breaking. She went to him, put her hand on his back. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "He died because of me," Silas said. "Because I let you stay here, because I didn't send you away. He died because he chose to be brave. You gave him that. You gave him something worth being brave for." Silas turned. His eyes were wet, his face twisted with grief and rage. 20 years I knew him. 20 years he lived alone on that mountain because he couldn't forgive himself for being a coward. And the one time he chose courage, the one time he tried to do the right thing, he got killed for it. "But he did it anyway," Clara said. "That's what matters. He knew the cost. He paid it. And he didn't die a coward. He died a hero." Owen stepped forward. He held out something else. A badge. "There's more," Owen said quietly. "Landry knows Thomas was coming here. Knows he had evidence. He's filing charges against you, Werner. Kidnapping. Conspiracy. Murder." "Murder?" Silas's head snapped up. "Claims you killed Thomas to keep him quiet." Owen shook his head. "It's all lies. But Landry's got the mayor, got the judge, got everyone who matters in his pocket. So you're here to arrest me." Owen was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He unbuttoned his coat, pulled out his sheriff's badge, looked at it, then dropped it in the snow at Silas's feet. "No," Owen said, "I'm not." Silas stared at the badge lying in the white, at this symbol of law and order discarded like trash. "What are you doing?" he asked. "What I should have done 20 years ago," Owen said. "I've been Landry's man for 15 years. Did things I'm not proud of. Looked the other way when I should have stood up. Let good people suffer because it was easier than fighting." Owen's voice cracked. "My daughter died last year. Pneumonia. Doctor gave her medicine, Landry's medicine. It didn't work. She died screaming. Took me 3 days to bury her. 3 days to realize the medicine Landry sold me was watered down, worthless. She died because I was too much of a coward to stop him." He looked at Clara. "Your father tried to stop him, died for it. Thomas tried, died for it. I'm not going to let another good person die because I'm afraid." "What are you saying?" Silas asked. Owen picked up his badge but didn't put it back on, just held it. "I'm saying I'll testify. Against Landry. I'll tell the territorial marshal everything. About the medicine, about the murders, about the corruption, about Thomas." He looked at the two men still mounted behind him. "These are my deputies. Good men. They'll testify too." One of the men nodded, young, scared, but determined. "Landry's ruled this territory long enough," the young deputy said. "Time someone stood up." Hope flickered in Clara's chest. Fragile, dangerous, but real. "When?" Silas asked. "Territorial marshal's coming in 3 days. I sent word yesterday, told him everything. He's bringing federal authority. Landry can't touch that." 3 days, Clara repeated. "Can we survive 3 days?" Owen's face was grim. "Landry knows his time's running out. He'll be desperate. Desperate men do desperate things. But you've got Thomas's testimony now. You've got proof. And you've got me." He mounted his horse, put his badge in his pocket. Not on his chest. Not anymore. "Lock your doors," Owen said. "Keep your rifles loaded. And if Landry comes before the marshal gets here, you defend yourselves. You hear me? You shoot first and answer questions later." Silas nodded. Owen turned his horse, started to leave, stopped. "One more thing," he said. "Thomas Voss, he was my friend too, long time ago, before I became what I became. He deserved better than dying alone on that road." "He didn't die alone," Silas said quietly. "He died brave. That counts for something." Owen nodded, his eyes wet. Then he rode away, his deputies following. Clara and Silas stood in the snow, holding Thomas's last testament, holding proof of murder and corruption and years of injustice, holding the weapon that could finally destroy Horace Landry, if they lived long enough to use it. Silas looked down at the letter in his hands, at his friend's last words. "I should have gone with him," he said. "Should have rode to Helena myself." "Then you'd both be dead," Clara said. "And I'd be alone. And Landry would have won." Silas looked at her, gray eyes full of pain. "He was a good man," Silas whispered. "Better than he thought he was." "I know," Clara said. "And he died proving it to himself, to the world. That has to mean something." Silas pulled her close, held her tight, like she was the only thing keeping him standing. 3 days, he said. 3 days, she agreed. They went inside, bolted the door, loaded every rifle, and waited for either justice or death to come knocking. The next 3 days crawled by like wounded animals. 3 days until the territorial marshal would arrive. 3 days until Owen and Ezra could testify. 3 days until Thomas's death would be avenged and Landry's empire would fall. But they had to survive those 3 days first. Silas and Clara took turns sleeping, one always awake, always watching, rifles loaded and ready by every window, every door. They ate cold food, didn't light the stove during daylight. Smoke might give away their position. Not that Landry didn't know where they were. On the second night they heard riders, distant, circling, testing. But they didn't approach. Not yet. Landry was waiting, planning, a desperate man with everything to lose. Clara sat by the window in the dark, watching shadows move through the trees. Silas sat across from her, also watching. "I should go back," she said quietly. "No. If I face him. If I tell the marshal the truth before Landry can twist it. You'll be dead before you reach town." Silas didn't look at her, kept his eyes on the darkness. "Landry can't let you testify, can't let Owen testify, can't let any of us live. Then we're trapped here for 3 days. We can survive 3 days." Clara looked at him. This man who'd saved her life, who'd given her warmth and safety, and something that felt dangerously close to love. She couldn't let him die for her. "Silas," she said, "if it comes down to you or me." "It won't. But if it does, promise me you'll choose yourself." Now he looked at her, gray eyes fierce in the lamplight. "I don't make promises I won't keep," he said. "Silas?" "No, Clara, I chose you. That day I pulled you from the snow. I chose you. And I don't take that back just because things got hard." Her throat tightened. "I never asked you to die for me. You didn't have to ask." They stared at each other across the small room. So much unsaid between them, so much they didn't have time for. Clara stood, crossed to him, sat beside him on the floor, took his hand. "When this is over," she said, "when the marshal comes, when Landry's arrested, what happens then? You get to choose. Go wherever you want. Do whatever you want. You're free. And if I choose to stay here with you," Silas's fingers tightened on hers, "then I'd spend every day grateful," he said quietly, "every single day." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, felt his arm come around her. Solid, steady, safe. "I've never had anyone fight for me before," she whispered. "You've got someone now." They sat like that through the night, watching, waiting, holding each other against whatever came next. Dawn of the third day broke cold and clear. No riders in the night, no shots fired, just silence, the kind that made the skin crawl. Silas stood at the window. Clara made coffee, strong and bitter. They drank it without speaking. Then they heard it, a single horse, coming fast. Silas grabbed his rifle, moved to the door. Clara took position at the window. The rider came into view, not Landry's men, not the marshal, Ezra Calloway. He rode bent over his horse, one arm hanging useless, blood on his coat. When he reached the cabin, he half fell from the saddle. Silas caught him. "Ezra, what happened?" "Landry." Ezra's face was gray with pain. "He knows about Owen, knows about the testimony. He's coming." "How many men?" "All of them. Maybe 10, maybe more." Ezra coughed. Blood flecked his lips. "He shot me. Came to my store last night. Accused me of betraying him. I told him the truth, that I was done being afraid. He shot me." Clara brought water, helped Ezra drink. "How bad?" Silas asked. "Bad enough. Shoulder. Went clean through. You rode 15 miles with a gunshot wound. Had to warn you." Ezra grabbed Silas's arm. "He's not waiting for the marshal. He's coming now, today, to kill all of you. Burn the evidence. Claim you ambushed him." "When?" "Soon. I left town at dawn. He was gathering men." Silas's jaw set hard. He looked at Clara. "Get ready to ride," when he said. "We're north, Canada. You can make it if you leave now. I'm not running." "Clara, this isn't your fight anymore." "It's been my fight since I was 14 years old." Her voice was steel. "I'm not running." Ezra coughed again, looked between them. "There's another way," he rasped. "What way?" "You go to him, meet him in town, public, where witnesses can see, where he can't just murder you quietly." "That's suicide," Silas said. "Maybe, but it's also the only way to keep Clara alive." Ezra's eyes were desperate. Landry's pride won't let him back down, but he won't risk killing her in front of the whole town, not when the marshal's coming. He'll try to make a deal, try to buy her silence. Clara's mind raced. Ezra was right. Landry needed control, needed the appearance of legitimacy. Killing her on a mountain was one thing. Killing her on Main Street was another. "I'll go," she said. "Clara, no. I'll offer him a deal, work off the debt legally. Fair wages, real work. He gets his money, I get my freedom." "He'll never agree." "Then at least I tried. At least people will see me try. And when the marshal comes, they'll know who refused to be reasonable." Silas stared at her, seeing something in her face he hadn't seen before. Not fear, not desperation, but strategy, strength. "You've thought about this," he said. "All night, while you were watching." "I was planning." Ezra nodded weakly. "It could work. If she's in public, if people hear her offer, Landry will have to respond, and whatever he says, the marshal will hear about it." Silas looked between them. Two people asking him to let Clara walk into the lion's den. "I'll go with you," he said finally. "No," Clara's voice was firm. "Landry has a warrant for you. The second you enter town, Owen will have to arrest you, or appear to. We can't risk that." "Then you're not going." Clara took his face in her hands, made him look at her. "I survived my mother for 7 years," she said. "I survived 15 miles of winter wilderness. I survived being half dead in the snow. I can survive one conversation with Horace Landry. And if you can't, then you burn that town to the ground. It wasn't a joke, they both knew it. Silas closed his eyes, every instinct screaming at him to protect her, to keep her safe, to never let her out of his sight. But she wasn't his to protect. She was her own person, making her own choice. 2 hours, he said. You get 2 hours. If you're not out by then, I'm coming in. Deal. Clara kissed his cheek. Quick, gentle, a promise. Then she turned to Ezra. Can you ride? Not well, but I'll make it. Then let's go. Silas watched them leave, watched Clara ride down the mountain on his horse, watched until they disappeared into the trees. Then he loaded every gun he owned, sharpened his knife, and waited. If Clara didn't come back, Horace Landry would learn what a mountain man could do when he had nothing left to lose. Clara and Ezra reached Silver Pin just after noon. The town looked the same, tired buildings, muddy streets, but something was different. People stood in doorways, watching, waiting. News had spread. Everyone knew something was coming. Clara rode straight to Landry's store. A crowd had already gathered. Word traveled fast in small towns. The girl who'd run away was back. The girl Landry claimed had been kidnapped. Clara dismounted, helped Ezra down. He could barely stand. She supported him as they walked to the store. The door opened before they reached it. Horace Landry stepped out. He looked the same, well-dressed, clean-shaven, calm. But his eyes were different, harder, desperate. A man watching his empire crumble. "Clara Wycliffe," he said pleasantly, "welcome back. I was worried about you." "No, you weren't," Clara said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You were worried about what I know, about what I might say." Landry's smile tightened. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Clara walked forward, stood in the middle of Main Street, where everyone could see, where everyone could hear. "I came here to make you an offer, Mr. Landry," she said. "A fair offer." "I'm listening." "My mother's debt, $800. I'll work it off, legally. As your apothecary, fair wages, $10 a week. That's 80 weeks, less than 2 years. You get your money, I get honest work. Everyone wins." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. It was a reasonable offer, more than reasonable. Landry's eyes narrowed. "Your mother's debt is more complicated than that," he said. "No, it isn't. You loaned her $800. She owes you $800. That's basic arithmetic. There's interest, penalties for non-payment. How much?" Landry hesitated. He could name any number, could bury her in fabricated charges, but he was too smart for that. Too many witnesses. The marshal was coming. $200, he said. Interest and fees. Total debt is $1,000. "Then I'll work off $1,000 at $10 a week. That's 2 years. I'll sign a contract, legal and binding." Clara was offering him a way out, a way to save face, to keep his power. All he had to do was be reasonable. She saw him calculating, weighing options. Then his expression changed, hardened. "No," he said. The crowd went quiet. "No," Clara repeated. "Your debt isn't just money, Miss Wycliffe. It's principle. You ran. You defied legitimate authority. That can't be rewarded." "I didn't run from legitimate authority. I ran from slavery." "Watch your words, girl." "Why?" "Because the truth hurts." Clara's voice rang out, clear, strong. "You worked me 16 hours a day, paid me nothing, called it debt reduction. That's not employment. That's bondage." Landry's face flushed. "I gave you opportunity, gave your mother charity when no one else would. You gave my mother alcohol, kept her drunk and dependent, kept her in debt so she'd have no choice but to send me to you, and when I finally escaped, you sent men to drag me back." "I sent the law because you were kidnapped. I wasn't kidnapped. I chose to leave. I chose Silas Verner. I chose freedom over your version of mercy." The crowd was listening now, really listening. People who'd looked away for years, who'd pretended not to see. Landry stepped forward, voice low, dangerous. "You're making a mistake, Clara," he said. "A very serious mistake. The only mistake was believing you'd ever let me go, but I understand now. This was never about the debt. It was about control, about keeping people so desperate They couldn't fight back. You know nothing about running a business, about what it takes to build civilization in this wilderness. I know what my father knew, Clara's voice shook but didn't break, that you were diluting medicines, cutting costs, killing people. He tried to expose you, and you had him murdered. Gasps from the crowd. Landry went very still. That's slander, he said quietly. That's truth, and Thomas Voss died trying to tell it, and you had him killed too. Thomas Voss was killed by bandits. Thomas Voss was shot in the back, on a road you control, by men who work for you, and I have proof. Clara pulled out Thomas's testimony, held it up for everyone to see. This is Thomas Voss's sworn statement, every detail about my father's murder, about your corruption, about everything you've done. Landry stared at the papers, at his empire dying in her hands. Then he did something Clara didn't expect. He laughed. You think that matters, he said. You think anyone cares about some dead hermit's accusations, about a 14-year-old girl's conspiracy theories? The territorial marshal will care. The marshal won't believe a word of it, not against me, not against a respected businessman who built this town from nothing. Then you have nothing to worry about, Clara said. Take my deal. Let me work honestly. Let the marshal investigate. If you're innocent, you'll be fine. Landry's smile was cold. Here's my deal, Clara. You come back to work. No contract, no wages, just work. Until I say the debt is paid. And you never speak about your father again. Never mention Thomas Voss. Never question my authority. That's slavery. That's reality. Accept it or face the consequences. Clara stared at him. At this man who'd destroyed her family, who'd killed her father, who'd turned her mother into a drunk, and her life into hell. And she realized something. She'd already won, not because she'd beaten him, but because she was no longer afraid of him. No, she said clearly, I don't accept. Landry's composure cracked. Then you're a fool, maybe. But I'm a free fool, and you can't change that. She turned to walk away. Landry grabbed her arm. The crowd surged forward. Men and women who'd been silent for years, who'd watched Landry rule through fear, who'd finally had enough. And standing at the front was Owen Brennan. No badge on his chest, just a gun on his hip. Let her go, Horace, Owen said. Landry turned, saw Owen, saw the crowd, saw his control slipping away. Sheriff, he said, arrest this girl. For defamation, for conspiracy, for whatever you need to charge her with. Owen shook his head. I'm not sheriff anymore. Turned in my badge yesterday. Sent it to the territorial marshal with my testimony. Your testimony? About everything. The medicine, the murders, the corruption, all of it. Landry released Clara's arm, stepped back. You're making a mistake, Owen, both of you, all of you. He looked at the crowd. I built this town. I gave you jobs, opportunity. And this is how you repay me. You gave us chains. A voice called out. One of the miners. Called them opportunity. You killed my brother. Another voice. In that mine. Said it was an accident. More voices. Years of grievances. Years of silence breaking. Landry's face went white, then red, then something worse. The face of a man with nothing left to lose. His hand went to his coat. Owen saw it, recognized the motion. Horace don't. But Landry was already drawing. Everything happened fast. Landry pulled a pistol, aimed at Clara. Owen drew faster. Fired. The shot echoed down Main Street. Landry staggered. Looked down at the blood spreading across his chest. Looked up at Owen with shock. You shot me, he said, like he couldn't believe it. Yeah, Owen said quietly. I did. Landry fell to his knees. The pistol dropped from his hand. He looked at Clara, at this girl who'd brought his empire down, who'd refused to stay broken. Your father, he gasped, would have been proud. Then Horace Landry collapsed face first in the mud, dead before he hit the ground. Owen stood over the body, breathing hard, the smoking gun heavy in his hand. The street had gone silent, everyone staring. At Landry's body, at the blood spreading across the mud, at the end of an empire. Owen holstered his gun, knelt beside Landry. His hand shook as he reached into the dead man's coat. "What are you doing?" someone asked. "Looking for proof," Owen said. Landry was too careful, too smart. If there's evidence, he'd keep it close. He searched the inner pockets, found a leather wallet, thick, heavy. He opened it. Inside were documents, dozens of them, loan papers, debt records, contracts, all bearing different names. Owen's face went pale as he rifled through them. "Son of a bitch," he whispered. "What is it?" Clara asked. Owen pulled out a stack of papers, all with one name, Ida Wycliffe. He handed them to Clara. Clara's hands trembled as she read. The first document was a loan agreement, $800, dated 1 week after her father's death, signed by Ida Wycliffe. Except the signature was wrong. Clara had seen her mother's handwriting 1,000 times, the cramped, shaky letters of a woman who'd never learned to write properly. This signature was too neat, too practiced, too perfect. She flipped to the next document. Another loan, $200, different date. Same fake signature. Then another, and another. Clara's vision blurred. She blinked. Tears ran down her face. "These are forgeries," she said, her voice barely audible. "All of them." Ezra limped over, looked at the papers over Clara's shoulder. His weathered face went white. "Your mother never borrowed this money," he said. "Look at the dates. Look at the witnesses." Clara looked. The witness names were people she'd never heard of. The dates didn't match. Some of the loans were supposedly signed on days Clara knew her mother had been too drunk to stand. "The debt never existed," Clara whispered. Owen took the papers from her shaking hands, examined them with a lawman's eye. "Landry fabricated everything," Owen said. "Probably right after your father died. He needed a way to control your mother, to control you. These fake debts kept you both working for free, kept you desperate, kept you from asking questions." The papers slipped from Clara's fingers, fluttered to the muddy street. 7 years. 7 years of beatings, of slavery, of carrying guilt that was never hers to carry, of believing she owed something, of working 16-hour days for nothing, of watching her childhood burn away like smoke. All for a debt that never existed. All for numbers on forged paper. All for Landry's greed. Clara's legs gave out. She sat down hard in the mud, right there in the middle of Main Street, staring at nothing. "All of it was a lie," she said. "Everything he told us, everything my mother believed, 7 years, it was all lies." Ezra knelt beside her, put a hand on her shoulder. "I should have known," he said, his voice breaking. "Should have checked. Should have asked to see the original documents. Your father would have known. Henry would have demanded proof before his wife signed anything." "My father trusted people," Clara said, her voice hollow, empty. "And Landry used that trust to destroy him, used it to destroy all of us." She looked down at Landry's body, at this man who'd built an empire on fraud and fear, who'd killed to protect his lies, who'd stolen 7 years of her life for money that was never owed, and felt nothing. No triumph, no relief, just a vast, terrible emptiness where rage used to be. Owen gathered the papers, stood, looked at the crowd that had gathered again. "Listen to me," he called out, his voice carrying down Main Street. "All of you, listen." The murmuring stopped. Everyone turned to face him. "Horace Landry built this town on lies," Owen said. "On fake debts and real fear. These papers prove it. Clara Wycliffe's mother never borrowed $800, never signed these contracts. Landry forged them, used them to keep Clara working for free, to keep Ida drinking herself to death." He held up the wallet. "There are more papers in here, dozens of them. How many of you owe Landry money? How many of those debts are real?" Silence, then voices. A woman stepped forward, old, tired, her face lined with years of work. "He said I owed $300, she said. "For medicine for my husband, but the medicine never worked. My husband died anyway." And the debt just kept growing. A miner pushed through the crowd. "He said I owed $200 for store credit. But I kept my own records. The numbers never added up. I worked off $400. He still said I owed $2. More voices, a flood of them. Years of suspicion finally spoken aloud. Years of fear breaking like a dam. "I thought I was crazy," someone said. "I thought it was just me," another voice. I thought if I questioned him, he'd take my house." Owen raised his hand for quiet. "The territorial marshal is coming tomorrow," he said. "Bring your papers. Bring your records. Bring anything Landry gave you. We'll go through every single debt, sort the real from the fake. And anyone who was cheated gets their money back, from Landry's estate, from his store, from everything he owned." He looked at the crowd, at faces watching him, some hopeful, some afraid to hope. "Landry's dead," Owen said. "His hold on this town died with him. You're free now, all of you. You don't owe him anything. You never did." Clara watched the faces change, watched understanding dawn, watched 7 years of fear drain away like water, watched people stand a little straighter, breathe a little easier, watched them remember what freedom felt like. An old man stepped forward, tears running down his weathered face. "My son," he said. "He hung himself 2 years ago, said he couldn't take the debt anymore, said he was drowning. I thought it was his fault, that he was weak." His voice broke. "But it was Landry, wasn't it? The debt was fake. My son died for nothing." Owen's face twisted with pain. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The old man looked at Landry's body. "I'm not," he said. "I'm glad he's dead. I'm glad someone finally stopped him." More voices agreeing, a murmur that grew to a roar. Years of suffering, years of loss, years of believing they deserved the pain. All lies. Clara stood slowly, looked at the crowd, at these people who'd lived under Landry's thumb, who'd watched her suffer, who'd looked away because they were suffering too. "How many others," she asked Owen, "how many other debts are fake?" Owen looked through the wallet, pulled out more papers. His face grew darker with each one he read. "Dozens," he said, "maybe more. Some of these go back 20 years. 20 years of fraud, 20 years of theft, 20 years of people working themselves to death for money they never owed." Clara looked at Landry's body one more time. "I hope there's a hell," she said quietly, "and I hope he's burning in it." Ezra put his good arm around her shoulders. "It's over, Clara," he said. "It's finally over." "Is it?" Clara looked at the crowd, at the broken people, at the lives destroyed. "He's dead. But the damage remains. People died. Families broke apart. Children grew up in poverty. How do you fix that?" "You can't," Owen said. "But you can make sure it never happens again. You can tell the truth. You can help people rebuild. That's all any of us can do." Clara nodded, exhausted, empty, free. Free. Such a small word, such a powerful thing. She looked down Main Street, at the town that had been her prison, that had watched her bleed and done nothing, and realized she didn't want revenge anymore. She just wanted to leave. "I'm going home," she said. "To your mother's cabin?" Ezra asked. "No," Clara said. "To the mountain, to Silas. That's my home now." She borrowed a horse, rode out of Silverpin without looking back. Behind her, the town began to wake from a 20-year nightmare. And Clara Wycliffe rode toward the only place she'd ever felt safe. The street went silent, everyone staring at the body. At Owen holding a smoking gun. At Clara standing over the man who'd destroyed her childhood. She felt nothing. No triumph, no relief. Just emptiness where hate used to be. Ezra put a hand on her shoulder. "It's over," he said. "Is it?" "Yes." Clara looked around, at the faces watching her, some shocked, some relieved, some still afraid. Then she saw her mother. Ida Wycliffe stood in the doorway of a boarding house, sober for the first time in 7 years, watching her daughter with hollow eyes. Clara walked over. They faced each other in silence, mother and daughter, connected by blood and nothing else. "Clara," Ida said, her voice rough from disuse, "I wanted to tell you. Tell me that I'm sorry, that I've changed. I'm sober now. I'm trying to be better." Clara looked at this woman, saw the trembling hands, the yellow skin, the eyes that begged for forgiveness, and felt nothing. "I'm glad you're sober, Mama," she said quietly, "truly. But sobriety isn't the same as love, and it doesn't erase 7 years of pain. I know I was a terrible mother. I know I hurt you. But I was hurting too. When your father died, I didn't know how to survive. So you made me pay for it. Every day, with my blood and my tears and my childhood. I was sick. You were cruel." Clara's voice didn't waver. Sick people deserve compassion, but they don't get to hurt others without consequences. Ida's face crumpled. Tears ran down her cheeks. Will you ever forgive me? Clara thought about it, really thought, about forgiveness and healing and moving forward. No, she said finally, I won't. Ida made a sound, half sob, half gasp. You can't mean that. I do. Because forgiveness would mean what you did was forgivable. It wasn't. You sold me, twice. You chose alcohol over your own daughter, every single day for 7 years. That's not something I forgive. But I'm your mother. You gave birth to me. That's biology. Being a mother is love, protection, sacrifice. You never gave me any of that. Clara stepped back. You're sober now. That's good. Build a new life. Find peace, but build it without me, because I'm done carrying your guilt. She turned to walk away. Ida called after her. Where will you go? Clara stopped, looked back one last time at the woman who'd given her life, and then spent 21 years trying to destroy it. Somewhere you'll never find me, she said. Somewhere I can finally be happy. Then Clara Wycliffe walked away from her mother forever. She found Owen standing over Landry's body. The crowd had dispersed. Someone had sent for the undertaker. What happens now? Clara asked. Marshall comes. I testify. Ezra testifies. You testify. We tell the truth. Owen looked down at Landry. It won't bring anyone back. But maybe it'll stop it from happening again. Will you be arrested for shooting him? Probably, but it was self-defense. Witnesses saw him draw first. Owen smiled tiredly. Besides, I'd rather hang for doing the right thing than live doing the wrong one. Clara touched his arm. Thank you, she said, for choosing courage. Thank you for showing me it was possible. Clara borrowed a horse, rode back up the mountain as fast as she could. The sun was setting when she reached the cabin. Silas was on the porch, rifle in hand, watching the trail. When he saw her, relief washed over his face so strong it almost brought him to his knees. Clara dismounted, walked toward him. They met halfway, didn't speak, just looked at each other in the fading light. He's dead, Clara said finally. Landry? Yes. Owen shot him. In self-defense. It's over. Silas closed his eyes, breathed deep, let 7 years of tension drain away. Are you all right? He asked. I don't know. I feel empty, like I should feel something. Victory or relief or something, but I just feel tired. That's normal. You've been running on fear and anger for so long. Now that it's gone, you don't know what's left. What is left? Silas reached out, took her hand. Whatever you choose, he said. You're free now, really free. No debt, no Landry, no one controlling you. You can go anywhere, do anything, be anyone. Clara looked at him, this huge, scarred man who'd saved her life, who'd taught her she was worth saving, who'd fought for her without asking anything in return. I choose you, she said. I choose this mountain. I choose this life, if you'll have me. Silas's breath caught. Clara, you don't have to decide now. You can take time, figure out what you really want. I know what I want. I've known for weeks. I want mornings by the fire. I want evenings with your harmonica. I want to learn the mountain and tend the garden and build something real. She stepped closer. I want you. Not because I need you. Not because I owe you, but because when I think about my future, you're in it. And when you're not, it feels wrong. Silas's hands came up to cup her face. I'm 20 years older than you. I'm broken. I'm difficult. I live on a mountain that tries to kill you half the year. I know. I can't promise perfect. Can't promise easy. I don't want perfect. I don't want easy. I want real. I want someone who sees me, all of me, the broken parts and the strong parts, and chooses me anyway. Silas's thumb traced her cheek. I see you, he said quietly. Every part. And I choose you, every day, even the hard ones. Clara rose on her toes, closed the distance. Their kiss was gentle, tentative, the kiss of two people learning each other, learning that touch could be soft, that closeness didn't have to hurt. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "Stay," Silas whispered. "Not as my employee, not as someone paying a debt, but as my partner, my equal, someone who builds this life with me." "Yes," Clara said. "Yes." They stood together as darkness fell, two broken people choosing wholeness, choosing each other, choosing hope. And somewhere in the pines a harmonica played on the wind. Spring came slowly to the mountains. Snow melted. Streams ran high. Birds returned with songs that filled the air. And on Widow's Peak, life bloomed. Clara woke each morning to Silas beside her. They'd married in March. Simple ceremony. Just Owen and Ezra as witnesses. No fancy dress, no grand celebration, just two people promising to choose each other every day. Now it was May. Clara worked in the garden, the one Martha had planted, the one that had lain fallow for 6 years. She'd cleared it, tilled it, planted vegetables and herbs and flowers, wild flowers mostly. Silas came up behind her, put his arms around her waist, rested his chin on her head. "It's beautiful," he said. "It's getting there." They stood like that, watching things grow. "I have something for you," Silas said. He led her around the cabin to where 3 graves stood under the pines: Martha, Lily, Thomas. Silas had carved new markers, beautiful wood, carefully lettered. "I wanted to do it right," he said. "Honor them properly. Thomas deserved that, and Martha and Lily. They deserved to be remembered." Clara knelt before the graves, placed wildflowers on each one. "Thank you," she said, "to the dead, to the mountain, to whatever power had brought her here. Thank you for him. Thank you for showing him love. Thank you for teaching him to love again." She felt Silas's hand on her shoulder. "They would have liked you," he said. "Martha especially. She had a soft spot for fighters." Was she a fighter? In her own way, she fought darkness every day. Sometimes she won, sometimes she didn't, but she never stopped trying. Clara stood, took his hand. "I'm not trying to replace her," she said. "I know. You're not replacing anyone. You're just you, and that's exactly who I need." They walked back to the cabin. Inside, Clara had been working on something, a project she'd kept secret. "Close your eyes," she said. Silas obeyed. Clara led him to the table, set something in front of him. "Open." It was a book, hand-bound, filled with pressed flowers, sketches, notes. Her father's knowledge combined with what she'd learned on the mountain. "A medical guide," she explained. "Everything I know about herbs, everything my father taught me, everything we've discovered together. I thought maybe we could help people, like my father did. Treat sickness, injuries, maybe save some lives." Silas paged through it, saw her careful handwriting, her detailed drawings, saw love on every page. "It's perfect," he said. "We could do real good, help trappers, travelers, people who get hurt in the wilderness. We could make a difference." Silas pulled her close. "We already have," he said. "You made a difference, in me, in Owen, in Ezra, in everyone who watched you stand up to Landry. You showed them courage doesn't mean not being afraid. It means choosing to fight anyway." Clara buried her face in his chest, felt his heartbeat, steady, strong. Home. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." That evening they sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. Silas played harmonica. Clara hummed along, both content in the quiet. "Do you think we'll be happy?" Clara asked. Silas lowered the harmonica, looked at her with those gray eyes that had seen so much pain, so much loss, but now held something else, hope. "I think we'll try," he said, "and that's enough." Clara leaned against him, watched light fade from the sky, watched stars appear one by one. "Thank you," she said. "For what? For pulling me from the snow, for giving me a choice, for showing me what love looks like." Silas kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for stumbling into my life, for refusing to stay broken, for reminding me that living isn't betraying the dead." They sat together as darkness settled. Two people who'd found each other in the wilderness, who'd chosen each other despite everything, who'd built something real from ruins. In the distance, a wolf howled. Silas didn't flinch, just held Clara closer. "Not afraid?" she asked. "Not anymore," he said. "I've got something worth protecting now, worth living for." Clara smiled, closed her eyes, felt spring wind on her face and Silas's arms around her, and wildflowers blooming in the garden. She'd come to this mountain to die. Instead, she'd learned to live, and that made all the difference. Years later, people in Silverpin would tell stories about the girl who stood up to Horace Landry, who brought down an empire with nothing but courage and truth, who married the hermit on Widow's Peak and turned his isolation into sanctuary. They called her the Wildflower Woman, said she could cure anything, fevers, infections, heartbreak, said she and her mountain man took in lost souls, gave them shelter, gave them hope, gave them a second chance. Some of the stories were true, some weren't. But this part was real. Clara Werner lived to be 83 years old. She raised 3 children on that mountain, taught them about plants and courage and choosing love over fear. She buried her husband when she was 72, grieved him every day until her own death. But she never regretted a single moment. Not the pain, not the struggle, not the hard winters or the harder choices. Because she'd lived on her terms, had chosen her path, had bloomed where she decided to grow. And in the end, that was enough. The cabin still stands on Widow's Peak, empty now, but maintained by descendants who remember, who visit every spring, who plant wildflowers on 4 graves under the pines. Martha Werner, beloved wife and mother. She fought the darkness. Lily Werner, taken too soon. Forever 3, forever loved. Thomas Voss. He chose bravery. Silas Werner, mountain man, husband, father. He learned to live again, and beside them, when her time came, they laid Clara. The marker reads simply Clara Werner, wildflower. She chose freedom. The flowers bloom there every spring, wild and untamed and beautiful, just like the woman they honor, just like the love that grew where nothing should have survived. The mountain remembers, the wind carries their story. And somewhere in the pines, if you listen close, you can still hear a harmonica playing. Red River Valley, sweet and sad and eternal. The sound of 2 broken people who chose to be whole together. The sound of love that endured. The sound of home.